Cover songs can be an amazing way for you to build an audience and reach new fans. But there's some right ways to do it and some ways that might just be doing Wagon Wheel and Don't Stop Believing over and over again that doesn't feel very productive. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the right way to do cover songs, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Here we go.
You're listening
to the CD Baby
CD Baby
DIY
Musician
Podcast.
Welcome to episode number 301 of the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast, where on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the right way to do cover songs and cover song strategies that work, and maybe some mistakes and pitfalls to avoid. My name is Kevin Bruner, and joining me is Chris Robley. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited for this episode because I think we're doing the Lord's work here. We're gonna rid the world of pointless, useless, terrible cover songs, right? After we record this episode, there will be no more bad covers in the world.
No, cover songs, this topic is interesting because artists typically fall in several camps. Artists that have been using them successfully, other artists that maybe have tried them in various degrees to really kind of be like, well, it didn't really help. And then other artists that despise the idea. And I think we're going to win some hearts and minds this time and help people understand how to do it in a way that helps build their artist brand and their career. And it's going to be a good conversation. Looking forward to it. Before we do, we have a sponsor for this episode. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by withkoji.com. It's time to supercharge your link in bio and turn it into a useful fan connection tool. And that's what Koji does. We're all at the mercy of social platforms only allowing us to use one link or one place to link from our profile, which is irritating. It adds a lot of complexity to getting your fans to the right places when you can only link them one place. It also makes your, just to build that relationship and get your fans off platform, which we know the social platforms aren't excited about, but you need to own your audience, and Koji helps you do that. It's an elegant, fully customizable link in bio tool. It's really amazing. It has all these extra things you can add to it, like a tip jar, an Ask Me Anything, and embedded YouTube videos. It really creates this really easy, almost, well, they like to call it an EPK. It's like your link in bio EPK. So supercharge your link in bio over at withkoji.com. And the best part is it's free. Chris, it's free. And you and I were looking at this, and it's actually really cool. Lots of really neat features. Makes it super easy to bridge that gap between social and owning your fan relationships and getting your fans to the right place. Because I think that, to me, has been one of the more troublesome trends with how modern social platforms work.
Yeah, and I was looking at a lot of their material as we were learning about it, and they've got a lot of great video content. So like you can use Koji to connect to a crypto wallet. You can use Koji to sell ebooks. You
had Chris at Crypto Wallet.
Yeah, they had me at Crypto Wallet. But yeah, no, it's super robust. They have a video where there's a guy who has like a TikTok channel where he does cooking instructions, and he has an ebook that he sells, and he does a little walkthrough. Seems very, very powerful for people who create content frequently and then want to drive results from the content.
Yeah. And I know that one of the big problems that we've talked over the years with social, and it's only gotten harder and harder, is that you need to own your audience. And having a social platform is great. Social tools can be very helpful. But if you're not using tools like Koji to get fans directly connected to you, you're missing out. You don't want to build Facebook's audience. You want to build your own, or Instagram's audience, or TikTok's audience. Build your own.
Or at least if you're building the one, hopefully it's building your own at the same time.
Yes, because they kind of go hand in hand. But
yeah.
Anyway, check it out, withkoji.com. We think it's a great tool, and you'll be hearing more about them. We got a big feature on the blog coming. And so, yeah. All right, Chris, cover songs. It's funny because so much has changed in the music industry since I started playing guitar in the mid 90s or actually early 90s, and went to college for music and music business. So much has changed since then. But the one thing that I think has probably been a consistent thread is the disdain that some artists have for the idea of doing cover songs.
It's
And I don't
beneath me,
get it.
man. I'm an artist.
I'm an artist. I only do original ideas. Which reminds me of some weird anecdote of I remember one time back in the early days of CD Baby, someone was trying to pitch to me as this being a good thing that this artist that they were helping had never even ever heard other recorded music. So what they were doing was so original. I'm like, one, that's BS. Two, don't ever try and pull that crap on anybody. That's no one's believing it.
Oh, that's why your
And
music's so terrible.
and three, that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. So let's start off with the 7 reasons you should do cover songs because we're going to lay out the case for doing cover songs. But then I think even artists that have been doing cover songs, they've oftentimes been maybe not using them in the best context or with the best strategy. And so we have a section about that as well. But let's just start with 7 reasons you should do cover songs.
Yeah, first reason to do covers is they help you keep momentum. We probably all know what it's like to get bogged down while you're waiting to write your next great song or your next 12 great songs to put on an album. Covers help you sort of just get to work and start recording. When you do, this is the second great thing about covers. They're really quick to record, not just because you're usually just focused on one song, but also because it's an existing song with an existing framework. And you can either adopt that framework and just sort of replicate it, or even if you're just doing your own thing with it and getting really creative, you at least have like a jumping off point and something to resist. So that means covers can be very quick to record. The next thing is that they help you with your discoverability. The right cover can help you capture existing interest on platforms, either because people are searching specifically for that, or whether it's genre or artist keywords and stuff, you can be algorithmically surfaced to people on TikTok and YouTube. Number four, covers help you learn new things. They can be a great way to grow as a writer or a performer or a producer, an arranger, because you're like inside someone else's work. So you can sort of pick apart why that song works. You can apply it to your own songwriting. But the other benefit of that is that when you're recording it or performing it, because it's a known song, you get over a lot of your hangups and doubt about performing it at all. So that's kind of related to the fifth thing. Covers have proven value in the marketplace. These are songs that the world already has shown to love. They're well known. The same is not true for your own music, not because your music isn't great, but just because people haven't had the chance to fall in love with it. Covers are a musical language fans already know. So a cover song can act as a kind of introduction. It's sort of an invitation to people, a friendly invitation to the rest of your album or the rest of your show or live stream. And the last thing that covers can be really great for is signifying something about your brand. And because these songs are so well known, listeners have a very quick instinct for what's different about them. So if you're taking a song in your own direction, let's say, the stamp that you're putting on it is all the more evident because they have that frame of reference to say, oh, here's what's different. That's what that artist's sound is like. So those are 7 reasons why you should be doing covers. We'll probably have more.
Yeah, all of those are great, and I think that list just nails it. I mean, there's so
All right,
we could go
episode's
all
done.
episode's done. See ya, shortest episode ever. No, there's so many things on that list that it speaks to directly to the questions we get from artists all the time, like, "How do I reach more fans? How do I build my brand? How do I do this? How do I do that?" And it's like, right there, it shows you how cover songs really fill specific needs and can be very specific and pointed at helping you build an audience, like discoverability. I like the thing that number 5, where you said covers have proven value in the marketplace. And we're going to get into some strategy stuff in a bit, but I think that there's some guidance around that depending on what you're doing and how you pick covers and which one that has value in the marketplace should I be doing, and maybe which one that's might have value in the marketplace but nobody cares. So
And to refer back to our one of our previous episodes, we should remind everyone that 0 is a value. So
yeah.
the proven marketplace value could be, oh, everyone hates that song. Don't cover it.
Yeah. And what is it with songs that everyone collectively says they hate, but it's still popular?
Yeah,
So either we're
right.
all lying and secretly love it, or there's
Uh,
this other group of music listeners that have their own world and the rest of us aren't a part of it. Anyway, yeah, that's a great list. So let's move into why people are so scared of cover songs, and some of the things that you mentioned on your list will be popping up throughout the whole conversation as we discuss covers, because they all play into all these other pieces that we have below. But let's address the why there seems to be hesitancy from artists to do covers.
Well, the first thing that I was thinking is artists are worried that doing a cover is selling out in some way. And this isn't true of every artist. Clearly, there's plenty of artists who have fully embraced doing covers on YouTube or TikTok or whatever. But there is still this sort of 20th century holdout of like, yeah, like I'm pandering to my audience or I'm pandering to get an audience if I do some hit song or something. That's beneath me.
Yeah,
Which
I think there's this idea that I know when I started in music, the big thing at that time, social networks did not exist. So the big perception around cover songs was I'm not real and I'm just a wedding band. The only way you could be a legitimate band, at least this was my perception, and heard it from multiple places. And when I went to college for guitar and music business, it was very prevalent there that the idea of this sanctity of being an artist means you must do original music. And the idea of using songs that existed before, it was like, I don't want to be a wedding singer. And in fact, isn't the movie The Wedding Singer all about
all
this
about that,
tension?
right?
I watched it on a plane recently, and like the whole thing is he's really good at it, but he's not a real artist. I believe that's the whole storyline. Has a lot of great
Yeah.
80s music in it though.
W Well, there's another thing at play too. It's that it takes up bandwidth, and that can mean two things. Like you only have someone's attention for so long, and so why are you going to use it on a cover song? Like if you've
Yeah.
got someone's attention, use it for an original. And the other thing is taking up bandwidth in that you only have so much time to record and do musical stuff. Why are you wasting that on someone else's song? Like all your time should be about just branding yourself fully. So that's the other thing. I think they think it's diluting their energy or their brand in some way.
One point you have here that I find interesting that I think after reading it, I agree that I think some people see the idea of using cover songs as pandering. And that might be like pulling out that Wagon Wheel or Don't Stop Believing, where you're like, oh, I can't believe did I
Play
really
this.
just play Don't Stop Believing in my set? What has happened to my life? Everything has led up to this moment where I'm playing Wagon Wheel, and that just seems disappointing.
Oh, but look at that. All the money went in the hat when I played that
Yeah,
song.
yeah. Well, see,
All
and
right.
that's
I'll
and
play
that's
it
where I
more.
think, and when your usage of the word pandering made me think, okay, you might be like, I know I can pull that lever and the money will go in the bucket,
Mhm.
but am I training people to like me for the wrong reasons?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the concerns. But I've got a hot take, and I think we'll probably have several hot takes throughout this episode. But here's my hot take. My hot take is doing cover songs will not ruin the perception of your artistic genius. It's not going to hurt your brand if done properly. It should be a nice lever to pull to help you reach new audiences and build fans. It's a musical language they already know. It's songs that have already been proven in the marketplace. So now all they get to focus on is you, the artist, your sound, what you're doing musically. And I think that really helps listeners connect with you as an artist and can be a great way into you and your music. So stop poo-pooing covers because I'm a musical genius. That is not how the world works. They don't care. They want music they like, and they want it by artists that they think do it in a cool way. So use cover songs. And we're going to talk about strategies right now.
Yeah, and I think you just said this, but it is about making that invitation. You use the cover song to draw on the interest, to invite people to listen, so then you can play a bunch of your genius originals and they'll actually hear them because they've been invited to the party through the cover song, which if they didn't have that entry point, then they might ignore all of your genius songs. So,
Yeah, and we're going to talk about three different environments for cover songs. And I think this is really important because I think as we were talking through this and preparing for the podcast, I think this is really where people who have tried cover songs and felt like it didn't work or didn't do the job, didn't expand their audience, that maybe didn't look at each of these different environments separately and how the strategy and opportunity is unique. And so those three different environments for cover songs, live gigs, that's probably where most of us initially come across them, or the desire for people wanting us to play them. Recordings, we've seen lots of artists use cover songs, big and small, on records that really reach into different audiences or just tap into that proven marketplace song, the song that's been proven. And three, video and live stream. And we lump those together, but they could also kind of be their own separate things because video strategy could be different than live stream, but we're going to put them together for today's discussion.
So let's get into the live covers first, right?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I was going to say the first thing I love about cover songs live, and the first thing you should consider, I think, when you're trying to pick the right song, is just what do you need in your set? Let's say you are a genius songwriter who has an hour or 45 minutes of originals. There's probably something missing mood wise, key, mode, tempo, whatever, like that. Maybe you're a genius songwriter, but they're all slow, depressing songs. Well, throw in an upbeat cover or vice versa. It's like you probably know where the dynamics or something starts feeling a little bit monotonous in your set. And that can be the perfect place to put a cover in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the key things. And this plays into some of the concepts that Tom Jackson talks about with putting together a live show. This is where one of the things that we did for, I think we did it for like a year and a half straight. We had this 70s medley. I've talked about it on the podcast before because I've used the recording of it to drive email signups. But the thing we were looking at when we were putting together our set, this was when our first album was out and it was doing really, really well. We had songs on the radio, was that we only had one album's worth of material. So we were missing some moments in our set. And what we identified that was a key problem was there wasn't this time where the audience just had fun. We don't necessarily write and record music, I would say, is party music or fun music. That doesn't mean it's not upbeat, because that's a different thing. It doesn't mean it doesn't rock, but it didn't engage the audience in a fun, this is, we're just here having fun together type way. And I think a cover song can really, really help address areas in your set where you're missing those moments. And it doesn't have to be a fun moment. Some of you write just 100% party music and your audience needs a freaking break for a few
They need
minutes
a
to,
downer, right?
yeah.
Do Everybody Hurts by REM or something like that. The next thing for live covers that you want to consider is because these songs serve as a musical shorthand. We talked about the invitation, but you're also giving them something to engage with in a more passive way. And in this context, I don't mean passive in a bad way. I guess what I mean is think of a set you're doing that's all your own original material, and most of it is unfamiliar to the listener. For them to fully appreciate and enjoy it, they have to have like 100% of their listening energy attuned to you. Whereas a cover, suddenly, if they know the song, they can relax a bit. They might like it as much or even less than your originals, but suddenly their body and their listening energy can just take a break. It's like a breath for the room.
Yeah. And I saw this happen at one of your shows, specifically when you were playing Owl's Den here in Portland, which is a nice sized listening room. I don't know how big the room was, but it was very full. And you had a mix of people that were there to see you because you were doing a residency all week. And so you had fans and friends coming out every night, but it's attached to a hotel. And so you have people that are there just because the hotel kind of promotes it as a feature of the hotel. And there's also a bar in there. And so you get a mix of people that have never heard of you before that are there as well. And I specifically saw like you had a full band and it sounded amazing. And everyone was kind of into it and very appropriately listening and paying attention. But when you did your Katy Perry cover, the atmosphere in the room changed. And it wasn't because everybody in the room was Katy Perry fans. It was because a song they recognized, like we mentioned, but what really struck me in that moment is like the whole time everyone's been sitting here, they don't know Chris, or a lot of the people in the room didn't know you, and they're trying to figure out your songs, like what's he about, what are lyrics, I'm trying to catch the lyrics, the sound, what's going on here, what kind of vibe is this. But then when you do your version of the Katy Perry song, which is also very different, it adds some different layer to your set. I think suddenly people aren't trying to figure out your songs, who you are. They're like, oh, I like this person. Like this song, I get a sense of their vibe now. Now that I hear them doing a song I know, I really like what they're doing. And I could just see the temperature and the vibe in the room shift after that. I'm like, that was a perfect placement of a cover song that really got people into it. And after your set, people went and bought CDs and merch. And I think that was a big part of it. They're like, I like this guy. I want to find out more.
Well, and I think that song works not just because like it's a fun song, and I think we do it well, but like my own stuff can be dark and can have a lot of more intricate chord changes and stuff. So there might be this level, like what you're saying is if they're appropriate listening, there might be this worry that I'm like a very serious. So then I do this ridiculous song, and I think they can all be like, oh, he doesn't take himself that seriously. So yeah, it's again another kind of breath of fresh air. But that's an example leads me to another thing I wanted to say is that covers can serve as a memory tool for the audience particularly audiences that don't know you up until that point. And I've had a
Yeah.
lot of times where like I remember I was in a Safeway once grocery shopping and some guy was like, "Oh, were you the singer of that band that did Another Brick in the Wall Part 2?" And I was like, "Yeah, that was me." And then the Katy Perry same thing. And I could take that as an insult, like, "Oh, the only thing you remember about me is that cover." But no, of course, that's the only thing they specifically remember a year or 3 years later is the thing they already knew. And I think it's a compliment. It's like, I enjoyed your set enough to remember you did that one thing. So
Plus, plus tapping on what you just said, if they had that experience seeing you and thought, "Oh, that was really cool," every time they hear that Katy Perry song, there's a good chance they're gonna think about you.
right. That
Uh,
that's my ultimate mission in life is make
that
people
when
think of
people think about
me when
Katy
they think
Perry, they think about Chris Robley. So, no, but I think that's a key thing that artists should use to their advantage, that there is that connection. And yes, like you said, a lot of times people think about it and they're like, "Dang it, they didn't remember any of my songs." Well, they just heard your songs for the first time. They've heard
Yeah,
that Katy Perry song a million times.
right.
You are trying to capitalize on the known quantity of that song to drive people to know the rest of your catalog.
Yeah, exactly. You had a good point when we were kind of trying to think of notes for this show. You said covers live, they help you expand your gig opportunities. And this is like so important if you want to be employable in a number of contexts as a
Yeah.
musician. It's like you just need songs and it's a lot to ask. Forget about a 3-hour gig. Sometimes it's a lot to fill your own 1-hour set with all originals and keep people super focused. So,
Yeah, I've seen this happen a bunch, and small town poets over the years, especially when we were touring all the time, while we didn't have a problem throwing cover songs in, we probably could have used them more to our advantage because there'd be times where we'd be asked to play 2.5 hours, and we just didn't have a set that long. And I think artists face that more and more now, where there's opportunities like we had Jeff Toohey on a couple episodes back, and he's like, covers, originals, I don't care. I just need you to play for X amount of time and keep people entertained. So that kind of environment, it's like, okay, this isn't my tour. That doesn't mean I can't play a bunch of original stuff, but I have to be flexible and adaptable to react to what's happening in the situation to make sure that the talent buyer gets what they need from me. And cover songs really help expand that opportunity. So it's like, hey, I've got my list of originals, I've got a list of covers, and we maybe have a plan for the evening, but we can adapt and be flexible. And if we get the random, person request a song, we can probably whip that one out too.
yeah, totally. And then that just opened up so many different settings for music too. A restaurant gig, a stage gig, a theater, a sports bar, whatever.
And the one bullet point that we have here before we move on to recordings is, you mentioned on your notes that a cover song gives the audience a breath there, and also that they're included as opposed to passive listeners. Like, depending on the style of music, people are always trying to like, all right, everybody move to the front. Oh, come on, why aren't you clapping? It's like you're trying to be sometimes a cheerleader for the audience. Sometimes they're like, come on, you're gonna have fun. We're having fun, right? But when it's a song they know, they loosen up and it feels like, okay, now I'm a part of this. I'm not trying to just figure out what this person is doing on stage. It's like this is a song for all of us to enjoy. Um,
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to say on this list, and this is true for all of these categories, but like learning covers and then having to perform them expands your musical vocabulary. So that could be your chops or your skill as an instrumentalist. It could be, any number of things you're learning about the song. But I think that's particularly true in a live setting where you have to just create it in the moment, as opposed to recording a cover where you could be more methodical. But this really helps you as a player.
Yeah. The keyboard player in Small Town Poets, he actually has a band that does very high dollar weddings and corporate events, and it's all covers. And part of me is like, dang, I wish I lived back east and could play some of those shows, because it's like they've learned 70, 80 songs, and just playing those songs night after night would expand my musical vocabulary so much, compared to where, when I'm mostly focused on writing for Small Town Poets and a lot of my guitar playing, I do other things with, the writing that I do, but it's like I tend to think about the project that I'm working on, and not just like, hey, how do I get better as a player? Because ultimately that's going to make my original stuff, whatever it's for, more diverse. All right, let's talk about cover songs and recordings. Some strategies around using cover songs, whether singles or on albums or EPs. To me, this shifts it from the live setting. I think there's some very different strategies here that you can be more intentional with. I feel like a lot of people probably just may release stuff that they've had in the live set and not really think about how those two contexts can be very different.
Yeah. Well, I think the first point I wanted to make is similar to the first point in the live setting, which is what are you trying to accomplish with this cover? Is there a theme or a mood that might be missing from an album? In which case, it can kind of do the same thing it does in your live context. You fill the gaps in a way. But you could also do it not so much filling in a gap as referring to the mood of the rest of an original album. Like if you've got some new big influence on your recording process, like you could do a cover by that artist that you're kind of mimicking in a way. So it can be like a reference point to the rest of the material you're putting out in a particular time frame.
Yeah, I like the themes and moods that are missing. Uh, Cover song, yeah, can be very complimentary. It can do a lot of things here, especially if you're looking at your album thinking, man, we're really missing this type of song and we don't have it. Cover songs are great. And yeah, I think in this context, that's like pulling out a cover song can really make the album feel more cohesive. And especially if you're releasing a single, then to set up an album and it happens to be a cover song, it can really help your fans understand maybe where you're going on your musical journey. Because we get the call all the time, this album sounds different than the other. Should I change my band name? No,
Right.
just look at how you can help your fans understand your musical growth and how you're changing over time. And covers can help fill in the gaps there.
Yeah, I've seen that a bunch of times where like an artist could have just dropped an album that was radically different from their previous one and their fan base could have turned on them. Or what I've seen happen is like they tease the new sound with a cover that's in that realm or something. So suddenly people are like invited to the party or invited along with your evolution. One other thing that covers can be really good for is getting on playlists. And we know there's a lot of sort of utility need playlists like acoustic covers or synth covers from the 80s or whatever. And you can almost engineer the song for those kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of people do this. We've seen people do it where it's really connected to who they are as an artist. And I've also seen people try to game the system where, yeah, you can go ahead and just do a bunch of random, like, for example, if I did a bunch of random 80s synth covers, it would feel like I'm just trying to tap into some trend as
Yeah.
opposed to it being an extension of my artistic experience. So I think you can use this in a lot of ways because there are so many cover song playlists around style, around mood, around genre, around artists, like Beatles covers. There's lots of those playlists. So you can look at those opportunities as a way to use your cover song recordings to speak to different audiences.
Yeah. Another thing I see a lot of artists do is just using a cover song recording as a creative exercise. And it could be that they want to know what it was like to record their favorite song. So they try to perfectly recreate it. I think that's always pretty fun to see, the ways in which they can't help but fail, but somehow come out sounding like themselves. Or, the other take we've been talking about is just taking it in a totally different direction and putting your own spin on it, but as a creative exercise. And then it could be a single. It could be a cover song you just put out on its own, and it doesn't need to do anything bigger. It could go on an album. It could come out in conjunction with an album to refer back to an album, or you could really dive into this project mode and do like a tribute album or an actual collection of covers that are all themed in some way.
Yeah, I was thinking about how on one of our it was probably our biggest tour that we did where we were the headliner. We had this moment in the set, and it wasn't really an acoustic set. It was more stripped down. We had a small drum kit near the front, and I played a different electric guitar, like a hollow body, and we all were on stools together up close. And we did this influences section. So we each talked a little bit about our musical influences, played a couple things related to that, and we went to each person in the band. So I was thinking recently, it might be fun to package that idea up in an EP or an album of like our influences. And so the point of that would just be more for people to understand more of our musical background, that things that have other artists that they may like, but also that have created the sound and the people that we are musically. And it's just like an extended story piece.
Yeah, that's cool. Then they can see like what you are an amalgamation of all these influences.
Yeah, and it was interesting because, mine was that was the most terrifying moment in our set because I talked about how I had learned when I was first learning to play guitar, I'd learned this Phil Keggy guitar song, and it was like I programmed all this stuff on this sequencer. This is like 1990. All this stuff on the sequencer, and I'm an electric guitar player, and I don't need to get in the history of church and church music right now, but most churches at that time, a long-haired person showing up playing electric guitar was frightening. But I'm like, I'm not an acoustic player, whatever. My dad was a music leader, so long story short, I had to play in church every once in a while. And so I programmed this all out, and I would play this Phil Keggy song that was like electric, and it had a lead in it. And so on our tour, I would play a little bit of that completely by myself, and there was like 1,500 people in the room, all just staring at me, and that's like the most terrifying. And then we would break into a song as a band, but then our bass player, he's Puerto Rican, so we played a Santana song that was a big influence on him growing up. So it's like it wasn't like things that made perfect sense. Oh, now I hear the connection, but it helped people understand who we were musically, and you can then start hearing those threads throughout our music.
Yeah.
Before we move on, the one last comment I'll make about what you said that I really liked was the idea of creatively inspiring you, like taking a song you mentioned, the idea of doing it perfectly, but also the idea of like, how can I take the song that everybody knows and do just the craziest version of it ever?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. That's
like
always
something
fun.
that's like you're not going to rewrite it because then it's not a cover song anymore, but the idea of like I'm really going to try and make it my own unique take on this. And we also didn't mention picking songs. Is it oversaturated? Maybe pick a different song or balance between deep cut and noise. And maybe, like on a recording that if you're trying to use a cover song, the whole premise of cover songs is that they're known songs. but,
Yes. Don't pick
but
the last song on a obscure album by your
yes, which
favorite
is
artist.
technically a cover song, but it's probably not going to hit people as, hey, this is a song I know and I love their version of it. So that's something to consider as well. All right, cover songs on social video.
Well, yeah, okay, so obviously social video is a huge place for covers, and the point you were just making is one thing I think everyone should consider when they're about to do a cover on social, which is how saturated is the market for this song. If you are very quick at producing music or very quick at learning songs, you can be pretty successful by sort of just scanning the top 40. And as soon as an artist, famous artist puts out a new song, you learn it, you've got your cover. You can capitalize on search volume that might be happening on YouTube, or some sort of viral trend on TikTok. If you wait too long, you run into this thing where, oh, suddenly there's 10,000 other versions of that song. You miss the boat. In that case, it might be better to go do covers sort of from the past or that don't have that much attention. But then on that side of the spectrum, like we were just saying, you don't want to go too obscure, because then this is true in almost any context. If you do a cover that's too obscure, you're going to spend almost as much energy marketing it or getting people's attention as you would for one of your own songs. And at that point, it's not helping you if you're spending equal amount of energy to make that invitation. So I think, yeah, if you're quick, do songs as soon as they come out. And if not, just be judicious about which older songs you pick to cover.
Yeah, and this is what I think has really turned the tide for many artists about some of the negative feelings about doing covers is seeing how YouTube has changed and grown over the years and seeing how artists have really used the platform as it relates to cover songs because it is the number 2 search engine. And a lot of the big YouTubers, they know release schedules, they know when people are dropping new albums, like big artists, and they know that like if Beyonce drops another track, surprise track tomorrow, they're going to be listening to it and recording a cover seconds later. So really the strategy here is trying to capitalize on just general interest of that's happening in the now, like the cultural climate, the things that are happening in pop culture, the releases that are happening because people are on YouTube searching for them.
Yeah, and I think I heard you say it's capitalizing on cultural relevance. So
Yeah.
if you can do that fast, that's good. One other thing I think we should point out about covers on social is they don't actually need to be full songs. It's perfectly reasonable to do a TikTok video that's 15 seconds of you singing the chorus of a Fleetwood Mac song or something like that. And that I think really takes the pressure off in a way to make it exciting to be like, "Oh, I can set up my camera right now and do that chorus." And because it's just 15 seconds, I can do it a few times, get it right, pick the best take, and like so it makes it easier to make content, which I think is a cool thing to consider. But when it comes to the approach that you take on social, I've sort of noticed two main lanes. One would be sort of what Gil did. Gil's the guy we talked to a few episodes ago, where his social content, when he's whether he's doing originals or covers, it's very much his virtuosity.
Mhm.
And he's like watching a stunt man, but just a musical stunt man. So there's like a thrill and like a shock factor. The other aspect of social video covers is way more faithful and like tutorial based. Even if it's a performance of a guy with an acoustic guitar doing the full 3.5 minutes, it might be getting a lot of views and volume because people want to see how did that famous person play that song. Maybe there isn't a great video of the original artist doing it, but this person's doing a very faithful cover to like learn something from it. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like stunts and tutorials is sort of my two lanes that I see being very effective.
Yeah. And yeah, tutorials. I found a lot of songs online by like how to play the guitar solo for this song or various things related to searching for a song because I want to know how to play it or find out information about it. And I find an artist that's filling that need. Yeah. And people getting on YouTube and or just social in general. Again, it's still like trading on that social currency that this is a known song. And so it just helps them understand, connect to the content you're making quicker, especially on the social platforms. Like the TikTok and Reels you're talking about doesn't have to be a full song. It's like people's attention span is so short that if you just do a really cool video with just the chorus of a song, you could post that probably 10 times and they'll probably keep watching it and keep
Right.
liking it.
Yeah. Well, that's like I was thinking about what you have to also consider when you set up to do these things. Like, is it going to be a produced, like lots of looping or pre-recorded tracks that you're singing, or is it just like a one take thing you're doing live? Like both can work,
Yeah.
but it will work if you consider some of the stuff we talked about in our TikTok episode where there's visual interest. That could be the stunt
Yeah.
aspect, but it also could
Yeah.
be that you're doing a cover on a lute or a unique weird instrument. Maybe you're doing
Yeah.
AC/DC on the bagpipes or something, an a cappella thing. But that's another way of like making sure you don't just record a cover and put it out there and it gets ignored. Like some other reason for it to capture interest.
Yeah. Now this is where I would say is the warning for many folks. This doesn't mean go get a lute, like Chris said, and now start learning all these cover songs, even though you've never owned a lute. It's never been part of your musical story. Sure, that might get likes and shares, but you might find yourself on that social media treadmill we've talked about where you're chasing likes that ultimately aren't going to build your audience. So I think a lot of times with this, it's like on the social and cover, it's like think about how it's an expression of you as an artist, like we've talked about, maybe some gaps it can fill in, some things or visuals that you have in mind. And understand that these platforms are different and how you use cover songs on social might be different. But ultimately, you want to keep an eye on like, how is this an extension of my artist brand and how will I get these people more connected to me as an artist? Like, what's the connect? I'm trying to use cover songs as connective tissue.
Yeah.
And so that's the important thing to think about.
Well, to conclude maybe this section about the cover songs, I have some warnings, like, please, whatever you do.
Yes, yes, because
Uh,
we've talked a lot about strategies, but there are some please don't ever do this and warnings and
yeah,
so
so
so proceed.
a few warnings about cover songs. One, we said don't cover oversaturated songs. You're just going to get, lost in the noise. Again, don't do too deep a cut that no one knows because you're going to have to hustle as much as you would for your original. And it won't be doing the work that a cover song can do if people love the song. When it comes to legality, just do your homework. Like, make sure you get a cover song license if you're going to be distributing it to download stores. If you're doing a medley or anything like that, or derivative work, like make sure you're getting clearances. If you have questions about that, you can check CD Baby's Help Center. We have a whole bunch of useful information about mashups and how to format them, how to clear the rights to it all. Make sure it's actually a cover song and you're not going to get into a bunch of hot water for borrowing something and then turning it into a new work. And then lastly, please don't do a cover of Hallelujah. The world needs no more Leonard Cohen Hallelujahs. We almost had enough with Leonard Cohen's. Then Jeff Buckley did his. That was plenty. Then we had Rufus Wainwright, and suddenly, like thousands of every time I'm in a bar, someone's playing that damn song. No more. This should be the end of Hallelujah, particularly recordings. What are you wasting your time? Jeff Buckley did, like, you don't need anything else. And that would be a rule for cover songs. If you reach a point where another artist besides the original artist has made a definitive recording of that, the song is dead. Like, Jimi Hendrix did All Along the Watchtower. That's the definitive version of that song. Bob Dylan wrote it. Jimi Hendrix recorded it. Great. We don't need U2's version. We don't need Dave Matthews' version. We don't need any more. So if you get to a point where a song has been made more famous by a different artist, stop while you're ahead.
So you hated the YouTube version of All Along the Watchtower?
I didn't hate it. It was just pointless. What's the
Yeah,
point of
I
doing a
agree. I agree.
pointless
When I
cover?
when I listen to that, especially that album now, I'm like, it's kind of weird that they chose that song. I don't
Yeah.
get why they did. I mean, it's a fine version of it, but I don't think it helped or yeah. One thing, mentioning the and let too deep of a cut for our second album, Small Town Poets' second album, the label, we were all in the recording studio. They felt like a song was missing and they wanted us to do a cover song. Nobody could figure out the right song. And we ended up doing an artist by the name of David Wilcox, which he's a singer-songwriter, and in those circles, he has a big following. But he doesn't have any big songs that have any breakouts like we've talked about that have that proven commercial success and big success in the marketplace that would help tie us to a bigger audience. But we ended up recording it. It was fine. Nobody really felt super excited about it. And it's a nice cut on our album, but it totally defeated the purpose of us doing the cover song because their whole point was for us to have a song that people knew. And so, like you were saying, it felt like we were having to do all the heavy lifting for this song, even though it technically was a cover. It was available publicly and had been. It didn't help us with any of the lifting to promote ourselves. We had to basically
Yeah.
go promote that song. And so it felt like it was not, while it's fine on the album strategically, it did not do what was hoped it would cover would provide for us in that scenario. So yeah, when you're thinking about covers, there's a lot to consider. The context, whether it's live, cover song for recordings, or social video. Lots of things to think about and different strategies that can be deployed. Then there's always going to be those songs that's for some reason you go to Broadway on Nashville or you're someplace in Vegas or New York or LA and you're going to hear covers of certain songs and then people are going to keep asking for them, but it's just weird because those aren't the songs I would say are probably your best choice to start off with.
Yeah. Yeah, true. You already said those, but no one needs a new Wagon Wheel recording either.
I've never understood the popularity of that song. I think I finally listened to a recorded version of it once because when we were doing our conference in Nashville and we were going to Nashville a lot for other things, I would hear it all the time. I'm like, where did this song come from? I have no idea
It's got
why.
a really singable
I'm
chorus.
I'm standing in a room and everybody knows this song except me. What am I missing? Where am I? So yes, cover songs. Highly recommend you put them into practice, that you use them strategically to your advantage, and lots of good stuff there for you to try. And we'd love to hear about it. So if you are trying cover songs or have a good cover song strategy, we want to hear about it. You can call our listener line at 360-524-2209, or you can email us at podcast@cdbabypodcast.com. What would you recommend artists to do? What have you tried that has worked? What have you tried that has failed? What songs do people keep asking you to do and make you roll your eyes, or have made you add them into your set list because maybe they fill a need? What have you done on your records and albums and singles? What have you done on social that's worked? We want to hear about it. You've got the number and the email address. And so if you want to be on the show, that's how you do it.
Another episode in the can.
There we have it. It's 301. We're 99 episodes away from 400.
400. It's only 2 years at this pace. We'll get there.
Yeah, 400. Here we come. All right. Well, I look forward to hearing about people's cover song experience. You've got to share your experiences here, people. We want to hear them. I'm sure there's some horror stories, some mistake stories, some glorious victories, and some humorous moments. Please share, because we all can learn from each other here. And I'm sure there'll be some. We'll laugh, we'll cry, we'll cheer each other on. So call the listener line, email us. And with that, we will catch you next time. Take it easy.
See ya.